This is TWiT.
I decided that I wanted to obtain remote control for my workplace's air conditioning so that, for example, if the day was going to be extremely hot and I was going to be arriving at my workplace early, I could have the AC kick on at 5 a.m. To begin cooling the place off so it's, habitable by the time I get here. And it was like, 90 degrees in my office when I walked in. It's like, okay, I've got to fix that. So I also wanted to have 24/7 temperature and humidity monitoring. I mean, why not? See what the temperature is. That's just kind of cool. And I guess I was just sort of dispositionally ready to start playing with this stuff a little bit. So I purchased an Emerson Electric Wi-Fi cloud-based thermostat and a continuous monitoring and logging thermometer hygrometer. Emerson Electric is a high-end commercial equipment provider that I had known of. And they also have a consumer branch. And I'm very pleased with my little $91 thermostat purchase. I don't need a touch screen or high-resolution color display. I just wanted minimal remote control and monitoring with some state-of-the-art scheduling features. The logging thermometer brand is Govee that, I'd never heard of before. It's from the Chinese company Shenzhen Intellirox Tech Company Limited. I know, right? Mm-hmm. At my other location, Laura and I were annoyed by the old school mechanical timer we had turning some little popcorn lights we have on a tree on and off at dusk, like on at dusk, off after we went to sleep. So I found just a cool little 4-pack of Wi-Fi outlets for $23 from Hong Kong-based GoSund. Once again, who? Yes, that's right, GoSund. All of these IoT technologies tie, of course, into my networks at both locations through standard 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi. The very nice $39 Govee logging thermometer uses a little plugged-in base station, which links to its indoor or outdoor remote sensor with a low-power 433 megahertz coded broadcast. And while all this was great, I was quite conscious of the fact that if I'm able to control the lights in my home while I'm out roaming around and to similarly check the temperature and humidity at my office, I'm doing so by contacting servers in Shenzhen and Hong Kong, which have in turn been contacted by the Wi-Fi connected IoT appliances, which are now beginning to populate my two locations. And I do not mean to in any way besmirch these Chinese devices or their China-based services. These are amazingly inexpensive and capable devices backed by free services. And I don't care, frankly, if they go out of business in 5 years. Starbucks charges more than $7 for coffee. I paid $6 for a miraculous Wi-Fi connected AC plug that can entertain any sort of complex schedule I can imagine with manual override. It's an incredible value. But it's not so incredible if it leads to intrusions into my home or work networks and gets me hacked. So here we are, 15 years into this podcast, and we've recently covered critical vulnerabilities in the third-party TCP/IP stacks used by billions of similar embedded devices. I have no idea what's inside these little white plastic miracle pods. I have no idea how anyone can sell me one for $6. And I know I'm not alone. In fact, I'm probably nearly the last person to add some of this automation to my home or office. It's I mean, I've been playing with it now for a week. It's really cool. It all works. But think about this. Right now, at this very moment, my world has 3 new, persistently established, outbound TCP links to external servers, to which I am completely blind and over which I have no control. So imagine what a graphic of the United States would look like, showing probably tens, if not hundreds, of millions of persistently connected IoT devices linking across the continents to their home-hosted servers and services. And now try to convince yourself that this hasn't occurred to some foreign power who may have agencies that are feeling a little defensive toward the U.S. at the moment. Now, it's true that my various PCs and Apple devices have something similar, but we know that a huge amount of work is continually going into the maintenance of the security of those devices, our PCs, our Macs, our Apple devices. They're getting patches all the time. You know, all the bits are being scrutinized. Does anyone imagine that my $6 AC plug is ever going to see a firmware update? Not a snowball's chance in hell. And that's fine too, because it's working perfectly. But modest as it is hard. Though it's hard to believe, it's a computer. You know, it's in my home, it's on my network, and it is always connected to China. Which brings us to the title of today's podcast, IoT Isolation Strategies. Because the one thing I didn't say is that despite all of these multifarious potential threats, both my home and workplace networks are today completely safe from external intrusion and attack through any defects or flaws that those incredibly cost-effective, affordable, and feature-packed devices might have. And the question is everybody else's network who's listening to this similarly safe? We've spoken about this before, but I thought that it would be useful to do a refresher. My own actual use of these technologies sort of like brought this home to me. I ended up having to use different strategies in my 2 locations because I just had different hardware available to me. Obviously, all of these IoT devices connect via Wi-Fi. So the easiest and most straightforward solution is to use or obtain a Wi-Fi router, which offers a guest Wi-Fi feature. In my home location, we have an Asus RT-AC68U. Nice router, a few years old now. I recently updated its firmware, so Asus is keeping it current, and it offers a guest Wi-Fi feature. The guest Wi-Fi has a different SSID, so it comes up in the list and you can see it. It has its own password, and crucially, no access to anything other than the internet. That's what the guest Wi-Fi feature on one of these later model routers offers. It may, however, have access to universal plug and play, UPnP. That I'm not sure of. And of course, any UPnP might be programmable to allow incoming unsolicited traffic to enter the non-guest network. I don't know one way or the other about that. That's something I haven't tested because for me, UP&P is the first thing I disable when setting up a network. Of course, all of our listeners know it is by design an inherently and entirely unauthenticated protocol. So any device on the interior LAN is able to use UP&P to establish connectivity to it at its whim. It's important to disable it if you can, or to really restrict its control using some additional firewall rules if you need to. So you'll want to make certain that guest Wi-Fi also has no access to the router's management web interface. It shouldn't, but be sure by trying to access the router's web management and make sure that you just don't get any connection at all. And really, at this point, as you're connecting things to your network, it's really crucial that you use an impossible-to-guess username and password for the management interface of your router. There's just no reason not to. You don't need to get into it very often. And you definitely don't want foreigners to get into it ever. Your browser will remember its wacky login username and password. So just make one of them that's impossible to guess, absolutely crazy impossible to enter even by hand, and leave it up to your password manager to fill that in. And by all means, take advantage of the fact that you have two crazy fields, both the admin and the password. Make them both insane. Why not? So at home, when I was setting up that little $6 AC plug, I switched my iPhone over to the guest network. So that was the network that the plug would see when it paired up with my phone, and I gave it my guest login username and password. So that's what the little plug is using. It is a untrusted visitor in my home forever, and it should be in everyone's. Okay, but let's suppose that your Wi-Fi router doesn't have a guest mode option. There's really no safe way to share a Wi-Fi access point with IoT devices where everyone is on the same wired and wireless network. I did give it a bit of thought. For example, an IoT device will almost certainly have a fixed MAC address, and it will always be configured via DHCP. Probably you don't have any choice. It's just, whoops, look, it's on the network. Yay. Right, easy. Okay. But the fact that it has a fixed MAC address means that if your router allows for MAC-based DHCP assignment of fixed IPs, you could arrange to group all of your IoT devices within a fixed IP block within your network. Then use router firewall rules to block that region's access to the rest of your network. But that's a lot of work. And it's still not a great protection since the devices would still be on the same Ethernet broadcast domain, and they would have access to your router's management interface, which just makes me nervous. A better solution is to pull a retired low band, that is, a 6.4 gigahertz only Wi-Fi router or access point out of the garage. You probably have one that you retired laying around somewhere, and set it up as an isolated guest IoT network. And that's what I did here at my workspace. So I have two access points whose network traffic is isolated from each other at the router. We'll talk about that in a second. But because I'm also a bit of a belt and suspenders guy, and because it was possible, I also disabled the 2.4 gigahertz radio of my primary Wi-Fi access point. All I need there is 5 gigahertz, and without exception, all of my IoT devices, the 3 that I have so far, are 2.4 gigahertz only. And that's probably not going to change anytime soon because 2.4 gigahertz is less expensive. Going dual band would be more expensive.
Well, and
I don't know how
most
they sell
IoT
this.
devices don't have 5 gigahertz.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, there's no way they're going to do 5 for, you know, for a $6 power plug. So all IoT is going to be 2.4. There's no way that any IoT thing could even see the high band, the 5 gigahertz. So anyway, I've got just because I've got my IoT devices on a completely different frequency than, you know, my iPads and iPhone and laptops that are all able to use the faster 5 gig band. As we know, 5 gig has a different penetration and reflection characteristic. So maybe it might be a problem, but you could try it in your home. Turn off the 4 gig, the 2.4 gig radio and see if you still have good connectivity for all your stuff wherever you are, in which case you could just dedicate that to IoT. As for separating the IoT access point from the rest of your network, there are 2 solutions. If you have a pfSense-based router, as I do, my little, I've talked about the SG1100 from Netgate, and I have an older, can't remember the supplier, but it's pfSense-based. Actually, I have them in both locations. Or if you got one of those little nifty Ubiquiti Edge Router X's that we were talking about years ago, either of those use an actual individual NIC, a network interface, for each physical port. That allows you to strongly isolate the IoT network by placing on its own subnet. You could leave your home on 192.168.whatever, and set up the IoT network on a different private subnet, like 172.16.whatever. That way, they will be on entirely separate Ethernet broadcast domains, no way for them to see each other, and the IoT network will have no way to see anything else. It'll be able to freely access the internet, hook into cloud services anywhere, but there's no way that anything that goes wrong there would be able to infect the rest of your network. What?
Forgive me, though, because this has always bugged me, even with the more complicated 3-router solution. One of the features of IoT devices, maybe you don't care, but is that I can sit at home on my network, you know, with my phone and access that device from my phone.
So I'm able to do that.
You can do that across the other network?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because they're each going out to the remote service and bridging that.
Oh, so they're natting it that way, or a NAT traversal that way, rather than going direct.
Well, they're actually not.
If I do my Hue lights, I'm going out, you're saying I'm going to the Hue server and then coming back in as opposed to just across my network. Oh, okay.
I think that you'll find that that's what's happening.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right. That explains it. Yeah. So as long as they're network addressable from the internet,
correct.
That's fine.
Now I should mention that I'm sort of in, crawl before you walk mode. I don't have a home hub or anything else. All of these things are hubless devices.
Right.
But they're working great for me with iPads and iPhones from all my locations.
That makes sense.
Because they're all reaching out to cloud services.
You're going to a third party. You're doing kind of like a traversal kind of thing. Okay.
Correct. And of course, therein lies the reason you want the isolation is I'm going out to a third party.
Right. Well, I understand. Yeah, I understand. But you don't want somebody to come in from the outside world onto your network with your devices via this internet device. So it's important that this internet device have a barrier between you and your devices. And I always thought that would hamper operation. But if you're saying if I'm going out to public internet every time, then it wouldn't, obviously. Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All these things now are cloud-based.
Right.
So anyway, the first idea is to use a router, if you have one, where you've got individual NICs that allow you to set up separate networks per port. Then you would take your older low-band 2.4 gigahertz only router, use it as an access point, plug it into one of the to the port to which you have assigned a different subnet, and it's on the net. It's able to do everything it wants to, but there's absolutely no way that it's connecting to the rest of your network. So that's the solution if you have one of those routers. If you don't, then we talk about the cool old solution that we talked about that you mentioned, Leo, years ago. You don't really need a 3-router Y. A second router is really all you need. You would put the insecure one on your WAN, and then your secure router would plug into it. And it would use the one-wayness of your secure router to protect your secure network and your 5 gigahertz band radio from everything on its WAN side, which would include the insecure network and then your connection out to the public internet. So the idea is it is a 2 NAT router solution where the inner NAT router is your secure one. The outer NAT router is the insecure one. Your inner network, where you care about security, is protected by its router in the same way that it would if it were right on the WAN. If it were right on the public internet, everything upstream of it would be the internet. Now you have your less secure network is part of what is upstream of your main secure router, and no way for anything to crawl back into your secure router that is out on the WAN interface, as is the IoT network. I think that's, it's quick and easy, simple. It does require a little additional hardware, but if you've got, a second Wi-Fi router around that you're not using, make it the router that connects to your home's WAN, and then plug your secure router into it. You've then got the double NAT solution protecting your home from anything that might happen on the insecure network. And then I would say, go to town with IoT, and security will not be a big concern.